Hello, beautiful people. And, well, this is the Highfleet 116 Sevastopol rebuild video, because I don't know if there even is a video out there rebuilding Seva, and either way, I think I've earned a bit of a pedigree to say that I know how to work around Seva a little bit. At first, I thought Seva really got the hard end of the stick with after that update, but I've taken a bit of a look into her properly without as much bias against the 116 update as I usually have, and I think she's actually a bit salvageable. A lot of the glitchy bullshit of 116 still makes her a nightmare to play, but at least she can actually go down pretty decently. I'm going to do two different rebuilds in this video. One's going to be a lightweight touch-up, so something you can literally do to your Sevastopol in campaign with just 10,000 gold off your back or something to that degree, and just a few hours. And by hours, I mean in-game hours, obviously, not you playing the game hours. They'll take you like 5 minutes if you know what you're doing. And hopefully it will make the Sevastopol at least bearable as a combat asset. It'll be de-emphasizing its tanker capabilities. Its sensor capabilities will remain mostly the same. You can obviously just take the sensors off, so it's not, and cap everything with armor, so it's not like that I need to really advise you on how to do that. So in this case, we're mostly just retain that profile, retain most of the hull profile, keep it still be Seva. Don't really change much in terms of hull armor in the first place because we don't want to keep it short. And then I'll also give you a little bit of a laydown of how you can do bigger remodels that for less effect over the rest of the campaign. Not anything dramatic, but ways you can like double triangle certain parts of armor, make bigger belts, whatnot. And then I'll also make a second part, which is going to just be me just going ham, and I'm going to basically rebuild the entire thing as hard as I can. Well, basically I'm going to respect most of the hull form. It's going to basically be a different Seva. I'm still getting rid of this hull though in both cases because screw that. But the second Seva should still look like the Seva, but it will definitely be a completely different beast in terms of capability, hopefully. So, without further ado, we get into the efficient rebuild. Alright, so the biggest problem facing Seva, unlike original where it was actually this Ammorack, don't worry, it's still the second worst problem about her, is going to be these engines. They might seem great and all, that they're D30S, they're giving me a bunch of speed and whatnot. They're not. They are absolutely kicking you in the teeth. So, I'm going to take them out. Let's just fast forward through this. Okay, so if you don't know why I'm meshing these parts here, on the left I'm going to put all the parts I've taken out of the ship over the course of this refit, and on the right is going to be all the parts I've added. It'll keep it easier to keep track of what's what. So, with that done, we now have at least an armor belt on the bottom. Seva's now looking at least like her top fighter cousin from 115, but we have a problem. She's going 80 kilometers an hour. For those who don't know, 90 is required for the fuel to not be burned at an extravagant rate. So we need to get the thrust back. That means that this actually takes priority over fixing this issue. In this case, we're going to actually go around and we're going to rip out 3 cabins and switch them for D30s. 1 second. Right. With that out of the way, we now get to 99 kilometers an hour, which gives us a full 9 kilometers an hour to leeway with. You can, if you want, add another engine. A good option is going to be right here above the large quarters, above the cabin. That's going to be useful if you really go down the line and you really do start adding weight to her. But for now, this is completely sufficient. So, with that in mind, the next priority is now going to be this Ammorack. Why is this Ammorack more important than anything else? It's because it's in the center of mass of the ship almost exactly. Any enemy below you is going to have their zeniths guide almost directly into this Ammorack, and they're going to be shooting pretty much at this Ammorack. This Ammorack, for all intents and purposes, should not be here. So we're going to take it out. Just simple as. And we are just simply putting 4 ammo racks back inside the ship in these gaps in the 1x1 form. Costs us a little bit of weight, but it saves us from that issue. Now, what you do next will actually depend on if you're on like a patch after 163 where arcs don't matter. For now, because arcs don't matter, it's actually not quite as important that we add some more gun mass. So what we're going to actually do is relocate this IRST. We don't need this FCR, it's redundant, and Sev's going to be a top fighter for us, so we're going to actually just put the IRST here, and we'll get our IRST capability back. We don't lose anything in the fire control, and then we're going to cap this off with a piece of armor. Right. Now, there is some more work to be done down there. However, it's going to be more important now to get these guns back. It's not going to be too complicated to do that. By the way, if you only want to do one of these steps, you're obviously going to have to handle the crew and power on a quicker note. The way you're going to handle the crew is going to be up here, right? That's an easy, quick grab for some crew spots. And then 3, 4. There's 2 options there, but I'll just do this. 5, 6. Right. That'll be our crew handled. And then for generators, they can also be handled in a very similar fashion. Right. Now with that handled, obviously this is going to cause another spike, but we're going to add 2 Vimples to here. Keep in mind that anytime you want, you can also switch, and I highly recommend you switch to CIWS. However, there's no statistical difference, so it doesn't matter for me. In this case, I would highly recommend you switch to CIWS because of the way Vimples have been boned in 116. In this case, you'll need 2 more Ammoracks. So to add 2 more Ammoracks, you're just going to do the same thing you did before. You're going to put them here, put them more high because you're going to be top fighting. Now you've created a crew problem again. You're going to go add more crew. Now you've mostly improved the Sevastopol. She's now fighting quite similarly to her earlier predecessor. You have multiple Vimples looking down, and that's also going to handle well when you deal with whatever the 164 or 117 update happens. Next up is going to be overall armor scheme improvements. So in this case, here's a good example. You have the option between using this piece for aesthetic reasons and using a square for actual protection reasons. This piece actually has the hitbox of a diagonal, so it technically will slightly reduce your ability to block damage into the engine. For now, we will use the square because it's heavier. While you're on these overhangs, you want to switch the undersides to reinforced hull, at least towards the edges, so that you don't have armor drop off. An example would be like so. Do the same on the other side if it's applicable, kind of is. Then while you're here, one solid option for improving the armor scheme is going to be actually changing this. What you're going to do is you're going to change it over to either this or, better yet, this. Reason why I'll compare in a second. You can still mount your Vimple back, but this will then allow you to mount armor inside the ship to give a bit more protection to that Ammorack. No guarantees, however, it's something. This is probably one of the more or less effectives, but it's one of those ones I've gotten out of a bit of... You can also, if you really want it to be strong, it won't look very good, but you can use a piece like this, and you can fit another triangle in back here, and you can even wait, sail a little away by de-armoring that. But this will work well enough. You're just trying to block this ammo from taking any damage from up here, because schemes like this, because these missile tubes could be empty, and you don't want things coming into your ammo rack. Especially missiles. We all know how that went. You can also choose to use a little bit of hull if you really want a connection here, but it's not real much point, but looks nice, I guess. From there, we need to re-improve the generators. Solid option actually is to remove these 2 fuel tanks. 2x1. I should have actually recommended this much earlier. And at that point, you're at a very functional state. The only other notation is that under these escape pods, you could remove the pods and either cap the armor off, or you could add a jammer in there. You can also add something in this 2x1 slot, obviously, right? Let's actually cap it off. Let's use jammers for the recommendation, and I'll make a little bit of a notation for them. All right. At that point, you've mostly done it to a significant aspect. You can also, by the way, slot a little corner in back here, but it's difficult because of the chassis blocking your view. At this point, Sevastopol is now back to her top fighter pedigree for the most part. You could probably also slot an armor piece here to cover this if you'd like. But for the most part, we've basically gotten back to a usable Sevastopol, at least. Again, biggest note is you could probably do this. There are obviously a lot of improvements you can do mid-campaign at this point. You could definitely optimize the crew layout and power layout. You could try and move 2x1 generators into where cabins are. Or even 8 2x2 cabins. It's just these few. You can move generators into these positions, and it'll give you a little bit more space efficiency to then move back into the cabins. And you might be able to squeeze out a gun or two more. You might be able to squeeze out some more thrust. There are actually some ways to go further and beyond. This is basically just trying to fix her to a usable state. Cost breakdown, it will cost you 10,025 gold. It'll refund you 10,025 gold in all these parts that you're removing from the ship. And I lost track while counting, but this is just a hair short of 20,000 gold, which means you're going to get 10,000 gold back. You're going to pay 20,000 gold here. You're going to be out about 10,000 gold overall. Don't forget that these Amoracks directly refund. You won't even need to buy the modules in the first place for the Amoracks. The crew cabins will have to be exchanged, the generators will have to be exchanged, so on. The armor parts, well, you're not taking any off, but the hull parts will technically come free. So note that you'll probably need this grouping roughly of modules to pull this off, if you want to do this rebuild in the field. Oh, actually, it's a little bit over. I forgot these 2 Amoracks, right? Anyways. With that said, it's time for me to go absolute ham and try and see if I can turn Seva into something a little bit insane. I'm going to mute my mic and initiate the montage. Alright, so that was an hour and 20 minutes later. We've now come out with a Sevastopol with a well-reinforced armor scheme, optimized ammunition placement, additional secondary guns, thrust to match. The only annoying thing I'm a little bit upset with, or displeased with, is there's not a lot of redundancy. The generators, you can only lose 1 before you start having a power issue. And the engines, you can also only lose 1, not even. That can always be solved. You can always just remove one 2x2 armor, probably this one, put a generator in its place, then take 2 guns out somewhere and place thrusters in their place. That'll give you a ton of redundancy and defensive utility at the cost of 2 of your secondary guns. Either way, you have 32 secondary guns, which is rather impressive, and yeah, you end up with a pretty decent Sevastopol. The big problem is now your fuel consumption's out the goddamn ceiling, but it's still got 3,400 kilometer range, so basically it's just a bit of expense in operation. But the double layering on the armor scheme, I did obviously keep aesthetics in mind. I could have easily just beefed the armor here. I could have used double armor everywhere, but it would look kind of ugly at that point. So I obviously kept aesthetics in mind. I did retain the sensors, of course. You can just take them off, so it's not like it's a big deal, right? You can just pop it off, put an armor cover, pop it off, put an armor cover, and the power you regain, you can just put engines in and generator place. How many large cores do I even have on this thing? I don't even know. That's probably one place that actually you might be able to min-max it out. Yeah, but that one is kind of a part of how the bridge looks, so I wouldn't change it. But yeah, with that, you have a pretty improved Sevastopol. I will have the file for this up tomorrow. I will post a video of this thing fighting and see how it works out along with its file. Alright, well that's all from me, and because it's taking forever for me to get anywhere, I'm going to have to say the LOMAL like and subscribe, haha, funny time thing, and I'm gonna dip now.